Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the National Information Day on European Research Council grants. The event is organized by Technology Center Prague in cooperation with Charles University and the expert group for supporting ERC applicants. The expert group is a joint initiative of Charles University and the Czech Academy of Sciences. Today, it's already the 15th National Information Day we have organized, and it's 14 years since we have organized the first applicants workshop. Is now the Czech research environment ready to accept ERC as an opportunity for science in the Czech Republic? Is the Czech research environment ready to accept it as its important part? These will be two main questions that will be raised and addressed in the afternoon. As you can see from the agenda, you will also hear about the funding philosophy of ERC, about the rules for participation, and tips for proposal writing, as well as changes in the proposal structure and evaluation procedure introduced by the Scientific Council in the 2026 work program. These changes and the reasoning behind will be explained by the ERC president, Professor Maria Leptin, who will have an online address later on. We are very happy to have Professor Leptin with us here today, and to have so many experts and even double grantees, and of course to see so many of you interested in the opportunities offered by the ERC. The event is video recorded, and you will have opportunity to ask questions, both orally and via Slido in the first session. In the second session in the afternoon, we will only use Slido. So the hashtag for today is ERC. You can see the QR code on the screen. I wish you an inspiring afternoon and fruitful discussions. And with this, we will move on to the first presentation, which is given by Professor Zdeněk Strakoš. Zdeněk is a former ERC panel member and even chair, and he is the one who, together with Professor Tomáš Jungwirth, initiated the establishment of the expert group for supporting ERC applicants in 2021. Zdeněk, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to speak in front of you about, say, some basic principles. I think it's appropriate to spend some time with that, because ERC is, I would say, very specific tool for supporting science throughout Europe, and also now even behind Europe. But science is not flying in vacuum. It's impossible to fly in vacuum, by the way. But it's a part of the society. And so it's perhaps important to think a little bit what is the role of science in the society and how society and science affect each other. Many times I've heard things like, well, the society is not healthy, so that's why also science is not healthy. And there are some, say, inappropriate things that are transferred from behavior in the society to science. I do not agree really with that, because I think this relationship is not symmetric. Because science definitely, as kind of one of the very important activities of the humankind should take a responsibility also for society. And so I think it's worth to think a little bit about what does it mean that the science is healthy or non-healthy. So what are these features? And so I'd like to say a few words about this before starting on ERC. So what does it mean, healthy science? I'll just mention a few features, not all of them, but those that I feel are important in particular. So the first, and I would say most important, is science is impossible without having respect to the investigated problem. This problem leads, in some sense, not that we are trying to push to the problem our solution, pre-thought or pre-prepared or prejudged. And it's very nice to hear that, how it is formulated by philosophers of science, and I highly recommend to you to look at the recorded lecture of Professor Miroslav Petříček at the cycle Věda na hradě. Unfortunately, it's only in Czech, but highly recommendable. And behind this main issue of having respect is something that we usually call humility. The second thing, science must avoid something which is now being called in philosophy intellectual arrogance. Intellectual arrogance can be characterized by, say, conformity, prejudice, closed-mindedness, lack of thoroughness, and other properties. And again, for those of you who are interested, I recommend to the works of Professor Qasim Qassam, who is a professor of philosophy at Oxford. Very inspiring reading. And again, this something that can be linked with that with one word is honesty. An honor to profession. What does it mean? That means that we simply don't give out of our hands the work that we know of, that it is half done. Of course, our work is never finished, but it means that I'm not selling something if I know that it is half full. And here I have a nice quote here that I like very much of C.S. Lewis, who was himself a scientist, not only a writer. And so it is related to the property that is very important for ERC, and that's originality. That the originality grows from professionality. If we honor the profession and we do every piece of our work as well as we can for the work's sake, that's from which the originality grows. It's impossible to really prepare a very good ERC proposal without having a piece of originality in it. And the last on this slide is science is about collaboration, not about competition. So, but the collaboration, is important, but because it somehow suppresses egos. And again, there is a quote from one theoretical physicist and mathematician from the last century, Cornelius Lanzos, and he said that during his quite a long life, the emphasis shifted from the it to the I, and this unhealthy. So science is not just employment. Person cannot be employed as a scientist. It's a vocation, and this is also a very important issue. Then science is hierarchical. It doesn't make a good sense to distribute the funds uniformly and wait that the Nobel Prizes will come out of that. Not very many will. And but this hierarchy is not dictated. It is established naturally. Those who are able to lead are obliged to lead. So that's the right word saying here is a service. That means leading means taking the responsibility for others. It's a big burden of responsibility. Science must fight fragmentation. And fragmentation is a big, big problem of science nowadays because it has grown very quickly and we don't understand each other, and not across the disciplines. I am a mathematician and I know how mathematics is suffering terribly from that. I have a quote from one of the greatest mathematicians and scientists from the last century, John von Neumann. So he said, mathematics falls into a great number of subdivisions, differing from one another widely in character, style, aims, and influence. And the quote continues, but we didn't have space here, so he's talking about the danger that it brings in, and we are now fully in that. Many years after when he has said that. That means we don't understand each other, and this fragmentation is very dangerous because it can lead to some bad habits. Maybe if we have time in the discussion later, I can mention to you some bad habits that are happening now in mathematics in that respect and the consequences that it has with respect to the actions of some agencies that try to measure the quality of science or somehow characterize quality of science. And the last in this list is that science must consider dissemination and communication in general is inherent part, the core part, not just some side dish or something which is extra. And I have a quote from another mathematician who was a Fields medalist. He died quite young. And so how he formulated what is the goal of mathematician, what it should be. And he said the measure of our success is whether what we do enables people to understand and think more clearly and effectively about mathematics. And now you can see what is the position about mathematics in general. So we haven't succeeded. We are failing as mathematicians to do so. But it is important not only for people, ordinary people in the sense who are not mathematicians, are even not interested very much, but to do this communication is important for clarifying thinking about the problem. And that's, again, absolutely important issue for ERC proposals. Because if the ERC proposals are not clear, if the problem is not clearly formulated, if the approach to the problem is not clearly formulated, there is no way it can be successful. So, okay, now, so what are the principles of the ERC? From the very beginning, ERC was first called, the program was called Ideas. So it is about ideas how to do big discoveries, cracking big problems. And it accepts risk as an inherent part of a big science. From the very beginning, that is the root that was stated there as a basis. It fosters initiative of people, of individual researchers. They are choosing the topic, okay? Not that it's dictated or prescribed in some way. And three things that really are in the basics also is honesty, trust, and responsibility. That means those people who are awarded grants, they are trusted. They're not thought that they are going to just sneak the money somewhere and they are checked every second day and they have to report on not important things. And why it is so? Because ERC, the goal was just to enable enable leaders to grow, kind of to help young people to become leaders of science in Europe and in world. But there is also other side. That means the community, the environment, must allow this leader to grow and let them to lead. So this is the other side that ERC cannot do. It just can offer that. And ERC also is based on the absolutely minimal bureaucracy. There is some bureaucracy that is unavoided, and it's somehow pushed into the ERC by the general rules of Horizon. But ERC from the very beginning tries to minimize that, and it's nothing is dogmatic within ERC. That means that everything can be discussed if it is rational. Okay, so question for us is then, ERC is changing since science in Europe. Last May, there was a meeting here in Prague, and one of the very, I would say, distinguished not only scientists, but also person who have directed many institutions in the world, in France in particular, Marc Mézard. So he claimed, well, ERC saved science in France. Without the ERC, France would be really in a very bad shape. So how it is here? Did we allow ERC to save our science, or we don't need it? So that's the question that we should ask ourselves, not only us who are here sitting, but all these people who really are making decisions about how science in Czech is organized. We see some progress because I think provably we are increasing the success in participation in ERC. And here I would like to congratulate on the floor of the Charles University those who get the last synergy grants. No one of them is from Charles University, but I think that's why Charles University should congratulate them, because ERC is our common enterprise. It's not about rivalry between institutions. So it's really fantastic what they achieved, these grants. But the question is whether this success, which we saw in the last years, really means that our environment has changed already. And I am not really sure about it. I think that we are still at the beginning, and hopefully this will come. What is the argument for this change, and for those that some people still say, ERC is not really for us or something, I have a quote here, and it's a quiz. If somebody of you know from this quiz is from this quote is from. So it says, the wide world is all about you. You can fence yourself in, but you cannot forever fence it out. And it describes very well our situation with ERC as well. Do you know? Do you have any guess? Yes, please?
Gilder in glory and fellowship of the ring.
Yes. I don't have any prize, but we'll negotiate later. That's exactly it. Frodo was traveling and escaping Hobbit land, And then this elf was telling him, there is no way to escape. You will not escape the world. That's exactly how it is with the ERC. We can ignore it for a while, but it will get us. Good. Lida, you are fantastic. So what do we do with it? So we have started, as already Petra mentioned, a long time ago. And now the system that we offer this group of experts, which are 12 people who organize that, but about 40 others who are helping us. So it's National Information Day, that's what we have today. Then we have system of workshops, plus mock interviews. And of course, we also have workshops that we are trying to help these individual institutions to build up their own system to support. And also we organize some individual mentoring and consultations. And even if we don't organize, we just do it. All of us who can see that, when we are asked, we're trying to do our best to help. And we are also trying to raise undistorted awareness that is still much needed. Well, and that's something that I would like to declare as absolutely crucial point and very important, because our goal is not that much. It's also, of course, to increase the number of ERC grants, but this is a tool. This is not a goal. The goal simply is to change this general environment. And for this, I think it's very important to understand that we work together. There is absolutely no place for any sign of rivalry between individuals of institutions. At our workshop, it doesn't matter who is from there. And we don't build our own system at the Charles University or the Masaryk University or elsewhere. And this is absolutely crucial because we should work together. We are a small country. Last week there was a CRECON meeting, and there were people from governmental people from Ireland and also Norway and Austria and Switzerland who are responsible for the top science. And one word was there: if we are a small country, then simply we must work all together, all the institutions together. This is absolutely crucial. So that's what we do. Well, this creates the community, and those of you who were in the workshop before, some of you were, so you can see that is this atmosphere of unconditional mutual help to each other, absolutely independently who is from where. Okay. There's a cost for this progress that we have seen, and this cost is this devotion, time, and energy of these volunteers that I've mentioned, this community of helpers, which is fortunately growing, and this atmosphere is still kept very well, which I'm very thankful for. Okay, what are the barriers? Why this progress is not better? Because I am convinced that we would easily be able, as a country, to have at least twice as much ERC grants than we got the last year, say. And so there's a lack of primary help and individual mentoring at the institutions. There is still a problem with that. We have formulated very clearly the material written with Petra and also with Zuzka, who was NCP at that time. And we said, well, we are missing the support from the individual institutions that should help and complement this system of workshops and work on this level. And if we have organized these workshops for the institutions, but still I think the outcome is still small proportionally to this effort. And so this generally supportive environment would be really good if it is clearly not only declared but done on an everyday basis. And so we should really consider ERC a priority by the institutions. ERC is not a cherry on the cake. That's a big mistake. If this is considered a cherry of the cake, that's kind of a root of the problems that we have, because we simply don't prioritize in the right way. Well, so what can be done on the level of the, say, volunteers and the experts I've already described, and Lida Tisiachna will talk about that in more detail. But what on the level of the, say, state or the top management of the institutions? Well, foster participation in ERC and other competitive calls, because we should be a part of the world. We cannot avoid it. We cannot declare that we play the best ice hockey in the world before playing with the best teams. And that's exactly the same story. So we should revise the practicalization of ERC-CZ. ERC-CZ is a great system, the best that we have in the country. And I can mention Tomáš Jungwirth, who will speak later, but he was one of those who really helped a lot to establish that. But the practice is unfortunately very bureaucratic and not really will help. And if we'll have more ERC applications, more ERC CZ applications afterwards, who will just be very positively evaluated, but will not the money, the system would collapse with this way of practicing based on this bureaucracy. And it should be understood that I've heard many times that we cannot have, panels based on the foreign experts because we cannot pay for them. That's true. But here we have it for free because we don't pay a penny to the panels of the ERC. They provide the evaluation for free, so we should use it. It's easy, but we should be willing to do so. And we should definitely stop the avalanche of excellence. That doesn't help if you put label on some products that it is excellent. The product must be excellent, and then it sells by itself, not by the label. And we should also not use this Czech science word. It's very funny if the Czech science is done by the people who are even not Czechs. So it's a science in our country, not the Czech science. And it's not just the word, because it then implies the actions many times. Okay, further comments? Closing soon. So, I've heard recently this year, after one of these meetings that I mentioned, the personal comment directed to me, you felt in love with ERC. No, I'm in love with my wife, not with the ERC. That's a nonsense. But, ERC is really not for us. So for whom it is, then? When I've asked, there was silence, but it was meant very seriously. Well, the work on the grant application is not exercise in writing. In our workshops, we, of course, try to help the people to prepare ERC applications. It must be written. Of course, it must be written. But it's not exercise in writing. It's an exercise in the clarity of thinking about the problem. This is something different. It goes hand in hand with writing, but it's a totally different story. And those who speak about ERC and working with the ERC applicants as an exercise in writing and wasting their time, there's no help then. ERC is not ideal. Mistakes happen within the ERC, and sometimes perhaps even big mistakes, but that's natural because it's done by people. And ERC tries to learn from the mistakes, and it does. And the number of mistakes that happen with the ERC, I would say, is negligible. I'm not aware of any analogical agency that covers all, essentially, disciplines in science that acts in such a fair way. And ERC does the best to help. And still, I've heard Professor Maria Leptin is not connected yet, but when she was the last time in the Czech in person, so then she was asked in one panel discussion, and what will ERC do for us to increase our success? And she replies, nothing. It is your job. Okay? So we are responsible for the environment that helps our talents to grow into leaders. It's up to us. ERC has done a lot because it's really going halfway by allowing to write the CV track record, not counting things that were a little bit unfair to the countries like ours. And this is changing. And so ERC really is on the half of the bridge, so the other half is our task. So that's about all what I wanted to say today, and I'll be very happy to react to any questions that you might have later on. And I wish you a nice and very fruitful day. Thank you for coming, and all the best. Those of you who are responsible for helping the talents, please help us to help. And for those of you who think about applications, think about it hard, and fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zdeněk, for your inspirative thoughts. I hope that the work of the community of experts will continue and that we will get even more researchers and institutions on board, and that we will work all together, as Zdeněk mentioned and highlighted. And with this, we move to our next presentation, which will be given by my colleague, Ludmila Tesiačna. And please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here again. So we will now change a bit the mode, and my presentation will be, as the title suggests, way more technical. And it is intended primarily for newcomers who do not know ERC yet. So apologies to those who are here every year and know my presentation by heart already. So the ERC is very unique in the European Union R&D landscape because it is governed by the Scientific Council, by scientists themselves. So there is no political pressure onto any specific topics that need to be supported. The ERC is truly bottom-up. It is open to any investigator-driven ideas which you might have. It is also unique in the sense that it is only evaluated based on the excellence criterion. So there is truly no impact or implementation criteria. The ERC only evaluates how your research will push the boundaries of your field of science, not in terms of societal or economic impacts. And also ERC awards the grants to the principal investigators and their teams. So it does not belong to the institution, meaning that in case the researcher for any reason decides to relocate to a different institution, the institution cannot keep the person or keep the grant. It is truly only of the PI. And the ERC is open to scientists of any nationality, of any citizenship, but the rules of Horizon Europe require that the grant is implemented in an EU member state or associated country. There is one exception, which are the energy grants, and I will be speaking about that a bit later on. So we will start from individual ERC schemes. There are 3 of them. I will introduce the rules as they are now, but I know that you already know there will be some changes in the near future. So there are 3 types of grants which differ by the level of maturity of the principal investigator. So starting grants are intended for those who are 2 to 7 years after the PhD defense. This is a person who has shown potential for scientific independence, and this can be the evidence can be shown by, for instance, having produced at least 1 publication without their previous supervisors. And the consolidator grants are for those who are 7 to 12 years after the PhD defense. And typically, these are people who already have their own research group or aim to consolidate their research program. And then we have the ERC advanced grants, which have no specific eligibility criteria, but these are people who are already leaders in their field, who have already shown they can come up with groundbreaking findings. So as you can see, those schemes differ also in the amount of grant that you can get. So in starting grants, you can get up to 1.5 million euro, and in advanced grants, 2.5 million euro. And all these individual schemes are for 5 years. Now let me introduce the Synergy scheme, which is a collaborative scheme in ERC. It is intended for a team or a group of 2 to 4 PIs and their teams who come together to resolve a problem which one of them only would not be able to tackle. So it should be truly an ambitious idea which requires this synergy of a group of PIs, and all of them should be really indispensable in this grant. So none of them should be seen as only an attachment, if I dare to say so. So they really should be needed for this grant to be successful, for this idea to really come to fruition. And PIs can ask for up to 10 million euro for 6 years. As you can see, the time commitment of the PIs is different, also depending on the scheme. So the older the PI, the lesser time commitment is required. Then we have the proof of concept scheme, which is only for those who have an ongoing or recently finished ERC grant. And the idea is that if those PIs come up with some findings which they think they could move closer to the real world, so to say, to the society or economy, they can use this proof of concept grant to test it. So it is a lump sum of 150,000 euro for 18 months maximum. But we are not yet finishing, because you might have heard that the ERC has a new scheme in the pipeline. Maybe we will hear more about that today. I only have some preliminary information. This scheme, which is now called ERC Plus, should be added to the 2026 work program as an amendment. And it should allow even longer career prospects to PIs, so it should last maximum 7 years, and allegedly it will be possible to ask for 7 million euro without any additional funding. And it will be open to any people of any career stage and of any nationality. I have already spoken about the time commitment, so you have seen that for each particular scheme. There is also one more rule. The PIs need to spend a minimum of 50% of their time in an EU member state or associated country, so that the European Union really benefits of those projects. Now we will move on to the calendar of this year's calls. As you know, it might be a bit confusing, the ERC numbering of the calls. Though we are now speaking about the 2026 calls, some of the calls have actually already closed in 2025. So the starting and synergy grant call are already closed for submission. Now the consolidator grant call is open, and the advanced call will open in May. And then we will have, as for the proof of concept, there will be 2 cutoffs. There used to be 3, now there are 2. So, as you know, I have already introduced the eligibility windows for starting and consolidator grants, and you will find the exact windows always in the work program of ERC. However, I should announce that from next year, from 2027, there will be a big change, and it will be possible to ask for an ERC grant immediately after the PhD defense. And so for starting applicants, the window will be from the defense up to 10 years after, and for consolidator it will be 5 to 15 years. As you can see, there will be an overlap, and the ERC believes that this will give more flexibility to the applicants to really decide which career stage they're at. So you will be free to really choose whether you feel more mature for a consolidator already at an earlier stage than before, or if you want to still ask for a starting grant. Because it is believed that in some fields, researchers become independent earlier than in others. So the ERC is now trying to be even more flexible in this regard. Apart from the standard eligibility windows, there is a number of additional reasons why you can ask for an extension of this eligibility window. This applies primarily to, of course, women who have children, but also if, for instance, there are those who have had a long-term illness or experienced a major disaster, for instance, natural or any other, which made them for some time unable to work. Very newly from this year, 2026, from this work program, there is a new extension ground, and this is gender-based or other type of violence. So it should be of long-term nature, minimum of 90 days, and experienced after the PhD defense. So everything is very well described in the information for applicants, including the documents that you need to submit. And this is the extension request form, just for your reference. Now, a few words about submission and resubmission rules. So it is important to know that you really have to choose only one scheme within the work program. You cannot apply to two calls, for instance, a consolidator and a synergy, which is a very frequent question that we get. And as for resubmissions, it is important to realize that without these rules, the ERC would be truly overwhelmed with repetitive proposals, and it would be really a huge burden on the evaluators. So the ERC has strict resubmission rules. As you know, probably if you are an individual applicant, then if you get C in the first step, then you are banned for 2 years to apply again. If you get B, the resubmission restriction is for 1 year. And further on, there are no more resubmission restrictions. And if you apply for synergy, the rules are basically the same now. So very newly in step 1, also if you get a B, you are banned for 1 year for applying to synergy calls. All right, so now you know that the ERC is bottom-up and the evaluation is done in scientific panels. So the ERC has 3 domains: physical sciences and engineering, life sciences, and social sciences and humanities. And each of those domains is divided into more specific focused panels. And it is truly important to choose the one where your idea will be seen as the most groundbreaking. I think we can leave these questions to the evaluators if you are interested. Now I will introduce the proposal structure. So the proposal consists of 3 parts. Part A, which is an online administrative form where you have to justify the budget. You have to also explain your ethical aspects. But also there is a number of declarations, and I would like to highlight one which requires you to have written consent by all persons included in the proposal. And it is often omitted by applicants, and they don't realize that they have to have it if the agency asks for that. Now, the part B1 is the part which is evaluated in step 1, and it consists of the CV and track record of 4 pages and part 1 of the scientific proposal, which used to be the extended synopsis, and it is 5 pages long. If I speak about any ranges, you should not only think about them as the maximum length, but also as the desired length. So you should really, recommend you to make full use of the potential that you have there. And part B2 is the longer part, but not that longer, because very newly it has been redesigned. It is now only 7 pages long, so you should be really succinct and to the point. And I will explain later on why the division has happened. And also there is a part of this B2 is the funding ID, which is a list of your ongoing grants and submitted applications, so that there is no overlap, no double funding with your ERC grant. Any references do not count towards the page limit, which is different in other Horizon Europe grants, so you should know that. And then there is a number of supporting documentation that you have to have, especially for starting on consolidator grants. So you really have to have a PhD certificate, which indicates the date of your PhD defense clearly. If not, then you have to submit some other supporting documentation. And of course, you have to secure a host institution support letter. I will not go through the whole list, you will have it at your disposal later on, but this is the structure of the current CV and track record. It is way more narrative now. It is not, there are no essentially pre-established categories what your profile should look like. So you can point out your 10 key research outputs, for instance, in this research achievements section, which you deem useful yourself based on your previous career, so not really only publications, but any other research outputs. And as I mentioned, narrative explanation is really appreciated by evaluators, so that you set the context why do you consider this important and relevant to the proposed project. And also the ERC pays attention to any nonlinear career paths that you might have taken, so you can explain that in the last section. Now, I have already mentioned that the B2 is way shorter than it used to be. The idea is that in the past, the B2 was quite repetitive in a sense, not really that you had to copy-paste it. It wouldn't work, but there was an overlap between the two parts. Nowadays, it is said that part B1, part 1 is about the idea and the overall research strategy, whereas B2 or part B, part 2 is about the implementation. So you will explain the methodology, the work plan, risk assessment, and there shouldn't be any overlap essentially, ideally. You don't even have room for that, so it is truly the idea to avoid that. And the element of feasibility has now been completely moved from step 1 to step 2 of evaluation. I have already spoken about the standard grant amounts. Now a few words about what is additional funding. So if you need to, if your standard grant amount is not enough, you can ask for additional funding for large let's say, items in general. So it is €1 million for individual grantees, with the exception of those who want to relocate to Europe, they can ask for up to 2 million euros on top. And in synergy grants, the additional funding is 4 million euro. There used to be 4 strict reasons why to ask for additional funding, and these are now only examples. So the ERC again is trying to be more flexible, and they say these are only examples. So we will check what you ask for, and we will assess whether it is reasonable or not. I will probably not stop too much here because you already know that the ERC uses different financial models. So for starting and consolidator grants, we use the actual costs model, whereas for advanced grants from 2024, we use the lump sum. And so now we are basically piloting whether it will be working in ERC. It is not that administratively complex as in other Horizon Europe grants, though you have to provide more detail than in actual costs, but still it very much resembles standard budget requests as we were used to. Before I stop, I would like to speak a bit more about what we do for you. So I would like to mention the main actor who is responsible for the system of support here in the Czech Republic. So we as ERC NCPs closely cooperate with the expert group for supporting ERC applicants, and you will have the opportunity to meet many of members of the expert group here at this information day, which I'm very thankful for. And as you can see, the expert group tries to cover all ERC domains, and each of them has a separate chair so that we really provide tailor-made support to each basically domain. And now let's see what we have for you. So we have the first event in this cycle is the National Information Day where you are today. The cycle begins today, essentially. So it is recommended to attend the Information Day 1 or even 2 years before the submission to really get the essence of the ERC. And if you feel that you already have your idea ready, you can apply to our workshops. We have 3 workshops. I will speak about them in a minute. We organize them usually in spring through autumn, but it is possible. We don't know yet the schedule of next year, so I can't really guarantee the schedule will stay the same. The admission to the workshop is first come, first served, and some of you might have experience with that. We really have a huge interest in the workshops, so I really recommend to check our Horizon Europe website for the day when we want to open this registration, because then it gets really quick when we open that. So what are the workshops about? In the first workshop, applicants are asked to briefly present their idea, and they get feedback from evaluators, former evaluators or PIs, members of the expert group, but not only, who tell them whether the idea is competitive for ERC, whether it could be developed further into a full-fledged proposal. Then in the second workshop, we try to put our applicants in the shoes of evaluators. So we try to obtain a successful ERC proposal, and we try to analytically, let's say, read the proposal with them. And then they also have an opportunity to interact with the one who wrote the proposal. And the very last workshop is about providing feedback to the B1. So applicants should already have their the first part of their proposal, the shorter one, ready, and they receive feedback. And Zdeněk has already said that we cannot provide feedback to the whole proposal, and this is where we really rely on the institutions to cooperate with us. And then if your application is successful in the step 1 and you get to the interview stage, we will be very happy to help you with that. We organize so-called mock interviews. I would like to highlight here that even if you don't get or don't want to go to our workshops, you are still very welcome here in the mock interviews. We don't really restrict the participation to anybody. The previous participation in the workshop is not necessary. So I would like to really highlight that. Zdeněk has already mentioned also ERC CZ, which is another huge motivational factor that we would like to highlight here. We are not the ones who are behind ERC CZ, but I think it should be mentioned at the information day. So very newly, if those who get to step 2 get either A or B, they are allowed to get this funding at the national level. So if they get an A, they are allowed to get their full funding for 5 years. If they get a B, they can get funding for 2 years to develop their proposal further, and they have to resubmit their ERC application again, which is not the case for A's who do not newly have to. And these are some of the most important documents that you should know. So I'm providing the most recent links here and some more information here as well. So these are our materials produced by us and CPs, or also by financial and legal NCPs, especially with regard to the budgetary issues. So I think this is it from me for now. Thank you very much for attention. I hope it has clarified some first nuances, some first ideas that you might have about what is an ERC grant about. And I'm very happy to pass the floor again to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Lida, for this very clear and very practical presentation. And with this, I would like to welcome Professor Tomáš Jungwirth, former ERC Scientific Council member. Tomáš will share insights from evaluator's perspective and also from the perspective of an ERC advanced grant holder. And he will discuss what makes or breaks a good ERC, competitive ERC proposal. Tomáš, the floor is yours. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. So first of all, let me thank Petra, Ludmila, Zdeněk for organizing this workshop. I really appreciate that, and thanks a lot to all of you for coming today. Okay, I will not give you specific instructions how to write an excellent proposal, or what to put in the proposal or not to put in the proposal. So what I would do instead, or what I try to do instead, is just to bring up a few discussion points that may be relevant to this question. Okay, and then during the break or among yourselves, at any point we can elaborate on these discussion points further. Also, I thought that I should put this presentation at least some structure. And the way how I decided to structure the presentation is to use the changes that have been made at ERC in terms of the evaluation procedures, not just the recent one, but over maybe more, a 5 years time frame, and reflect on these changes. And so this will be the basis, this will be the structure, and we will come up also with some of the discussion points. And for this, I will try to use my experience that I gained in these various ways how I got acquainted with ERC. I also recommend you to read this reference, but maybe it's not necessary anymore because as far as I understand now, the ERC president will give a speech later on, and it will probably be based on this little write-up, which I found very useful and I recommend it. All right, so this is how I'll try to organize based on the recent or not so recent changes. In 2021, interviews were introduced in the advanced grants. I understand that most of you are junior applicants, but I think we still can come up with a few discussion points reflecting on this change. Then we will move on to the 2024 change in the CV and track record. That was quite substantial and I think important to reflect on. Finally, in the last work program 26, a major change in the structure of the proposal, now divided into parts 1 and part 2. I think there's really a quite useful point to reflect. And so these 3 points are, I was imagining sitting in the chair of an applicant. That means basically in your chair. The next 2 ones are imagining that I am sitting in the chair of the panel member. So what happens in 2026 is that there will be less panel reports prepared by the panel. Let's take a look at that, what it means. And also in 2026, there will be some proposals not even discussed at the panel. And I think we should also reflect on that. This is a new development. And finally, in 2027, now I guess we're sitting in the chair of the Scientific Council and really trying to make or get a really broad picture of the scientific career of someone in connection with ERC. And this is related to the extended eligibility periods. Let's see what we can learn from that. Okay, let's go to the first one. In 2021, interviews were introduced also into the advanced grants. Before, we only had interviews in starting and consolidator for the individual grants. And so here is the ERC justification. The candidates should be given the opportunity to defend their proposals, in person. And the second one was it allows the interview allows a direct exchange with the applicants, meaning the panel members with the applicants. Now, these are copies of the justifications that were made for introducing interviews for the starting and consolidated grants. So it just meant that ERC is very serious about these justifications. And what it also means, and this is an experience of an active panel member, that actually interviews are important. They do influence ranking. What would be the other discussion point is recall that the interviews have 2 parts. In the first part, you present your proposal, and the second part is Q&A. The first part is typically only 5 to 10 minutes, and in 5 to 10 minutes, you have to introduce your entire proposal. So what I think is important is when you write your proposal, you should start from the end. You should start from thinking about the interview. How am I going to present in the world the entire project in 5 minutes or 7 minutes you're given? You should think about this before you even start writing your proposal. And I think the most important part that is relevant to this discussion point or question is your abstract. Because you won't be able to say much more within the 5 or 7 minutes or 10 minutes at most than what's written in the abstract. Now, there will be 20 to 25 minutes of Q&A, and here the questions will be primarily based on the questions raised by the experts, referees, in the second round. Not the panel members, but really people from your specific topic, the expert referees. So here, I guess, what you might want to reflect on or discuss is, have I really thought in detail about every single specific detail, not including just the idea, but also the implementation? the methodology, all the details that are in the second part of my proposal, the longer part of the proposal, because these will be experts in the field and they may ask really pertinent questions, and you should be ready to answer those questions very quickly because there will be quite a few and only 25 minutes for that. Second one, curriculum vitae or CV and track record. So really relatively big changes in 2024. Just to highlight the changes, I just put side by side how it used to be before 2024 and the new template for your CV and track record. So what you see is that before it was basically itemized, right? I mean, there were all these items and you were supposed to fill, item by item. Your organization of scientific meetings, institutional responsibilities, reviewing responsibilities, etc. But also look at the brackets. It says, if applicable, if applicable, if applicable. I mean, honestly, it was awkward. You know, when I was preparing my CVs, I was just looking at this, wow, this is a strange thing. I think there is a huge improvement. Now, the itemized things are really short and they are really quite straightforward, it's just personal details, right? But then it comes to the narrative part where you're just supposed to highlight the main research achievements and main peer recognitions, and you may choose. I mean, in the research achievements, typically it will be the best papers you want to describe then in more detail, but for some people, it could be their startup. I mean, it could be in IT. Person has no papers, but he started up a wonderful startup company. It could be this achievement. So it doesn't really matter. But what really matters now is not the itemized points, but the description or the explanation. That's very important. Now, what is the justification behind this by the ERC? The justification, first of all, says now that ERC panels will primarily evaluate the research project. It says not primarily your previous track record, primarily the research project. And they continue and they say, to the extent to which the applicant has the excellence and required scientific expertise, this is your CV and track record, to successfully execute the proposed project. So the CV and track record should be linked to your proposal. So here are the discussion points. The CV and track record is an inherent background part of the proposal. Okay, so it provides the background for the evaluators, but it doesn't mean, so it kind of plays a secondary role. The proposal itself plays the primary role, but it's still of key importance. So why is it still of key importance? Because you should explain your achievements and recognitions. And now here's the connection, I think important connection to the proposal itself. Because your achievement and the recognition should be reflected in the proposal state of art and parallel preliminary results. So when you think of writing the proposal, think also about your CV. There should be a good match between what you did in the past and what is the state of the art of the field. Because by this, you will show the panel that actually you already played an important role in a field which is relevant to your project. And also preliminary results. Preliminary results are extremely important part of the feasibility, because if you have already some preliminary result, that could convince the panel that, yeah, that's very challenging, risky, but likely feasible. The second discussion point, original and creative proposals objectives, that means beyond your and others' past track record. So here is one thing to keep in mind. Don't overdo it in the sense that you did everything already that what's in the proposal, right? In your proposal, you have to go beyond the state of the art. So your previous track record should be closely linked to the prior art or preliminary results, but it should not be that closely linked to your project objectives, because you should go well beyond that. What's next? 2026 work program, part 1 and part 2 of the proposal. I think these were really big changes. So let's take a look what happened between 2025 and 2026 work packages. So before, we had the extended synopsis of the scientific proposal. So that was the part B1. And in part B2, we have state-of-the-art and objectives and methodology. So basically, these were two proposals. Basically, two full proposals, one shorter and one longer. Now what we have from 2026 is that we have one proposal only. I think this is really a huge change, okay? We have one proposal only, and it has two parts. The first part is about the idea, but not only that, but also about the overall approach and research strategy. Don't forget about that. The idea is not just about what I'm going to do, but it's also inherent part of the idea is, in general, or overall, how am I going to do that? This is very important part of part 1 still. And still part 1 will be evaluated in step 1 only. Now in step 2, the panel members will also get the part 2. But it's really now part 2 of the same proposal, so this part should now elaborate in detail on the methodology and on the implementation. So what is the justification? So here I highlighted a few points: scientific ambition and creativity first and implementation later. So what the Scientific Council was reflecting on here was that during the first or step 1 panel meetings, there tend to be a lot of discussion about the details of the implementation, because actually the panel was requested to comment and evaluate feasibility already at step 1. But it was very difficult because it was, in particular for the risky and highly challenging project, it was very difficult to describe all the details about the feasibility within the 5 pages, where you have to first of all explain the idea and the objectives. So the Scientific Council decided, and I think this is really a wise decision, let the panel focus in step 1 at the idea and overall strategy, how you're going to tackle the problem, and the details, that means the details of feasibility, are delegated to step 2, when there is enough space to cover it in your proposal. What else do I have? High risk and potentially groundbreaking proposals used to be killed at too early stage. ERC wants to fund precisely such projects, particularly creative or difficult projects. So this just, again, highlights what is the mission of ERC. ERC wants to have high risk and potentially groundbreaking proposals, but it also felt that some of these proposals were actually killed in step 1 based on feasibility evaluation, which was not the right thing. So discussion points. I don't know, for me, I don't know, it's not maybe even a discussion. I was like, finally, you know, because whenever you were supposed to write an ERC proposal, you were thinking, okay, so I wrote B1, and now how am I going to do this same thing at the beginning to justify the objectives, etc., and now to copy and paste, you know, what I've already wrote in B1. You should not do that because it looks silly, but, you know, strange. So I think it's really finally is one proposal, and I really do appreciate that change. It's actually maybe interesting to realize how this all happened within ERC. Why did we have these short and these two parts B1 and part B2? So first call, which was 2007, I believe, just starting. The evaluation was actually, or the proposal writing was actually in 2 steps. In step 1, the applicants submitted just part B1 only. And then only those that made it to the second round wrote the part B2, the long proposal, and that was evaluated in second round. So what happened were 2 things. It became too long. I mean, the cycle for making the decision was too long because you had to wait for the applicants that made it to the second round to write the long proposal, right? So you had to give them enough time to do that. And second, there was a huge oversubscription for the first round, or step 1, because it's much easier to just write 5 pages than to write 5 plus 14 pages, right? So to remedy these two problems, ERC decided that you will submit those 2 proposals at once. That will discourage some people from submitting, and it will shorten the cycle because the submission will be at once. Okay, it made some sense. It actually did work, but the scheme itself had a problem, and I think finally ERC got rid of the problem, and we have only one proposal, but one proposal which has part 1 and part 2, and they are very well defined now. So there's no need to repetition, and I think good for all of us, 7 less pages to write. I mean, that's a win. But still, one thing I think is an important discussion point is that the overall approach and the research strategy still remains an inherent part of part 1. Let's not forget about this. This is very important. It's not just about the idea. It's not just about the objective. It's how, in the broad picture, how am I going to solve the problem? All right, now let's get to the chair of a panel member. So only 3 panel reports in step 1. It used to be 4. So what is the justification? Well, that there was unmanageable numbers of applications in some panels. So it's basically the burden was too high for panel members. So the Scientific Council decided to help the panel members. Now, this will reduce, so the legally required is minimum 3. Of course, if the panel chair or if the panel decides that it needs more reviews, it's perfectly legitimate, but the minimum now is 3. Are there some discussion points? Well, I just still want to emphasize that even with this, there will be still 30 projects per panel member to evaluate as a homework at home before the panel meeting in step 1. Okay, as a panel member, I will still get about 30 projects to evaluate. Now, I don't know how other panel members do that. Some panel members maybe take a week to do this. I know positively of some panel members that only take a weekend before that, to go through these proposals. So I think this is very important when you write a proposal, when you write the abstract, where you justify a project, think of these panel members reading 30 projects before the step 1 panel meeting. And another thing is among the 10 to 16 panel members from which you will get your step 1 evaluators, it's quite a good chance that none of them will be expert in your field. Only if you make it to the step 2, you will get real experts from your field. But in step 1, you can get lucky or unlucky, if it's a good expert. It depends. But that's the reality. All right, some proposals do not have to be discussed by a panel. That's another change in the procedures of the panel meetings. So what is this? What's the justification? So as part of your homework on the proposal, as a panel member, you give marks. They range between 5 outstanding and 1 non-competitive. And you can also do 4.5, 3.5, 2.5. So what's new is that for a mark of 3.5 or below from all reviewers, if all the reviewers, that means 3, give 3.5 or less, then the proposal does not have to be even discussed. I mean, this is a huge change because before, panel members were legally required to discuss every single proposal. Now, there's been statistics, and always when Scientific Council makes a decision, it's based on huge number of statistics, and it's possible now because ERC is around for, 15 years now or something like that. So they have huge number of proposals, and they realize that if that happens, the chances that the proposal will be funded is actually 0. And it will be a huge help to the panel because it will reduce the number of projects by 30% that are discussed at the panel meeting. And I think this is going to be a major change. There will be much more time to discuss the borderline projects, which is the difficult part. Another part of the justification, there is a view that proposals with disparate scores are more likely to lead to breakthrough discoveries. So it's not about the average, that the average has to be above 3.5. It's that every evaluator has to give a mark 3.5 or lower to throw this proposal away. But if the average is 3 or 3.5, but it's because one evaluator didn't like it and put 2 or 1, but the other ones put a higher mark, it will be discussed. And this is because ERC thinks that these proposals which have a lot of discussion and maybe controversies in the panel meetings, those might be the ones which are the most interesting. So, discussion points. Safe and solid proposals will likely get 3.5 or lower mark by all panel reviewers, and there will be no discussion. So maybe it's not a good idea to write a safe and solid proposal to ERC. Maybe other funding agencies, maybe other schemes. Why not? There's nothing wrong about safe and solid proposals in science, but it's not a good idea to do that in ERC, in particular now. Good chance that the proposal will not even be discussed. And as I said, controversy among reviewers is not uncommon in ERC, and is definitely not a showstopper. I know it from my own experience. Final point. Extended eligibility window for starting 0 to 10 and consolidated 5 to 15 after PhD. We already heard that. What is the justification? I mean, in some areas like IT, you can have an IT nerd who is 15 years old and probably already perfectly eligible to submit an ERC proposal. Why not? Unfortunately, with ERC starting, he or she would still have to wait for the PhD because PhD remains an eligibility must. But immediately after PhD possible. Why not in some fields? This is quite interesting addition to this because now we have overlapping windows, right? Fairly large 5 years overlapping windows. And there's a reason for this because the idea of the ERC Council is that the windows should be such that at the point when the earliest starting grantee might want to apply and ends at the time when the latest starting grantee would be able to apply to the consolidator, okay? So it's not just an arbitrary overlap. It's that the starting grantee who apply the first year after PhD, when he finishes the starting, he can already apply for the consolidator. And the starting grantee who applied for the starting grant the last year, he could still apply for the consolidator. But simultaneously, it now would give a chance to have 2 starting grants easily, okay? And that's what ERC wants to avoid. So there's a new rule, only 1 starting and only 1 consolidator. Before, we did not have that rule. So potentially, theoretically, there could be 2 ERC grants. But again, when ERC looked into the statistics, it was really, really exceptional. I think it was just a handful of cases. By the way, there's also statistics about the advanced grants, and the record is 3. Now, the starting has been extended to eligibility to 0 after PhD. Now the question was, maybe it's too early. Maybe these guys have no chance to compete. Again, the big statistics in ERC was that the former starting applicants, the first year was tricky. They had lower success rate, but already the second year of the eligibility window, it was pretty much even. So therefore, ERC is quite confident that this is okay, but it will depend very much on the field. So here are the last discussion points. So ERC's trajectory, let me count, okay? So you can get 1 starting, 1 consolidator, 3 advanced, each 5 years. So this gives you 25 years. Well, that's a pretty good career. You're nearly covered, right? I mean, I think after 25 years, if you're not already a president of your university, you can squeeze in another advanced or 1 synergy, and you're done, pretty much. You can retire. So, so that's the broad picture of the council, let's say. And this maybe could open a few discussion points. So for example, when to apply for the starting. So again, you can apply for the starting 0 years after PhD. Immediately after you get a PhD, you can apply for that. I would still be careful. I would think of your field. I mean, if you're in IT, I think that probably would be perfectly okay. Maybe too late. But if you're working in, like big expeditions, or if in your field typically you collect data for 10 years before you get the first result, that's probably not a good idea to apply first year. Okay, so it very much would depend, and this is what ERC Council wants, to give the flexibility within the broad range of fields. It can be very different in different panels. Consolidator, when to apply to the consolidator grant? I mean, you can apply to the consolidator when you're still eligible to apply for ERC starting, or that's going to be a 5 years window. Is it a good idea to apply for a consolidator within that window without having a prior starting? I don't know. Think about it. Tricky, huh? The panel may ask a question, why is this guy not applying for starting? I think you should have a very, very good point or a very, very good reason for applying for a consolidator when you're still within the starting window and you did not have starting before. When to apply for advanced? That's a nice thing. You don't even have to have a PhD. Okay? But that's probably not your case here in the audience, but that's just a joke that, you can be high school probably, and you can already apply for advanced. Again, the big statistics doesn't exist. So for advanced, when you are in consolidator period, it's possible, and actually there have been quite a few successful applicants for advanced who were still in the consolidator bracket statistically. But again, I think it's a good idea to think about this 2 or 3 times before you do that. You have to have a good justification for that. Otherwise, the panel may ask a question is, why is this guy not submitting within the consolidator? He's still more consolidator. Or the grant is not big enough for 2.5 million euros. It's more like 2 million euros project, okay? So be careful if you're a consolidator and you want to be greedy and get more money, or if you think more prestige, if you think that advanced is more prestigious than consolidator. I don't think myself that's the case. Synergy, final point. When to apply for synergy? The idea of the scientific council was that actually also the junior folks should apply for synergy. The junior folks should be part of the synergy proposals. This was the idea of the ERC council. The ERC council, I believe, when I was there, definitely wanted that. I don't know what the situation is now. And I also don't know what the statistics, what the numbers are now. But when synergy was reintroduced, which was during the time I was on the council, immediately we were looking into the success rate, and the junior guys did not have a very good success rate, to be honest. It's a shame, I think, but it's also a reality. So that's also a point to discuss or to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these valuable insights and also for explaining to us how ERC is changing and adapting the rules and proposal structure during the years. And now I would like to open the floor for discussion. So do we have any questions in the hall?
Thank you for the very nice and informative presentation. It was great. I have a question that, because you mentioned that it is very important to have a supportive environment, and if you have joined a new institute and you do not know, you're still figuring out if they are supportive or not. And for example, ERC knows that this institute is not very supportive, and I apply for a ERC grant from this institute. Is it possible that the ERC panel members who know that this institute might not be able to support the grant per se might scrap the project just because of that, because of the host institute where I apply from?
It's working, okay. Thank you. By no means. The institution is not a part of the evaluation. And of course, in the past, and that's what we are always stressing, it is not good if from the country there is a lot of Cs, that means non-competitive proposals, because it creates an odor of kind of, again, some application what will come, but not the country, not the institution is a part of the evaluation, should not be present. Your grant is actually can be transferred to another institutions. So you are not describing that how much your institution will actually support your application. On the other hand, of course, you should secure your application a priori. That means good. It's very recommendable to talk to the representative of the institutions and to make an agreement with them that, okay, I'm going to submit the ERC because it's a serious work. And it's not the grant, just the money, but it's a program for many years ahead, okay? And so that's why the institution should be supportive in principle, because it's very beneficial for it. So it's very advisable that you will get in some friendly environment, okay, with the institution beforehand.
So maybe if I can add to this, from my own experience, it's never discussed on the panel. I would even think that is forbidden. So there are always these ERC officers during the panel meetings, and if the panel meeting starts to go, away from the rules, I mean, we are warned. I mean, guys, you should not discuss. It's not that the ERC would interfere at all with the decision process, but with the procedures. If we don't follow the rules, we are informed that this is beyond. So it is not discussed. But the panel members are humans, and they can have subconscious or conscious biases, but those can be actually both positive and negative with respect to, let's say, weak host institution. Because it could be the negative bias would be, oh, this is just a weak institution, forget it, right? But it could be also the other way around, because if your track record is really strong and if your proposal is really sound and nice, they would say, wow, such a good guy, it must be really his or her contribution, her work, and not the environment's, right? So it could be actually both ways, the subconscious or conscious bias, but it's never explicit.
It's not an evaluation criterion, right? Do we have any other question from the audience? Yes, please. Wait, sorry.
Oh, sorry. How much weight is or attention paid to the team members? Does the committee evaluate the co-workers at all, or is it some rule like how many students you should have in the team, etc.?
The panel can evaluate only what's written in the proposal. Okay, so it basically is on the proposal or on the applicant, him or herself. So you can have a proposal where the only name is the name of the PI, and the rest would be that the PI says, I will hire that number of postdocs or PhD students. So the number of PhD students, they somehow should correspond to the budget, right? So that kind of limits the number of postdocs and PhD students you can hire. And you don't have to give names. You will hire them. You will find them if you get the funding. But you can also name important collaborators, which could be within your host institution or within your team. But then you have to justify why this person is important. You should explain it in your project. And you can also have, and I believe this is still the case, and if it's not, please guys correct me, that you could have collaborators from outside your institution, but even outside Europe. definitely had it in both my projects, that I had important collaborators which were from an institution which was not even within the EU. Again, it should be well justified, and also the funding that goes to that institution. So funding can go outside Europe, but it should not be a substantial part of your total budget. It should be up to, I would say, 15, 20% at most. Okay. Does that answer partly your question?
Thank you. Any other question? Sorry.
If I may add a little bit, we often have a question which is additional, that may I have in my team somebody who is more senior than myself? Okay, so that resonates what Tomáš have said. I mean, if you give a name and we explain that somebody is really important in your proposal, why not? But on the other hand, you must be always cautious, because PI is the boss. It's an individual grant. ERC is not about consortia. I'm not talking about synergy, it's a little bit different, but it's still, the synergy is still about the synergy. Synergy is not a collaboration, it's something different. But that means if you have somebody who is more senior in your team, it must be clear that you need this expertise, but this is not who, it must be very clear who is the boss, I mean, from the point of view of science in this proposal.
Thank you. So, any more questions from the audience? If not so, then we go to our Slido questions. So, the first one is, what is the logic behind the new ERC Plus call? I'm not sure whether Tomáš would like to add something to it, or we just leave it to the next session to Professor Maria Leptin, or maybe Lida, please.
I think we should leave it to Professor Leptin if she will want to, before the news is public, of course, because the ERC has quite strict policy on that. They want to inform first us and CPs and also program committee members, and then they can make it public. And tomorrow, actually, we will have a meeting where we should get more news about the ERC Plus scheme, but it is not yet available publicly. So this is what I could tell you from our previous meetings, what I know, but we should wait a bit more. And maybe Professor Leptin will tell us, even in a few hours, a bit more about the scheme. So let's be patient.
Let us wait for her speech. The next question is, what is the website in which we can follow the updates on targeted workshops for future applicants? All information, also presentation from these events, will be available on our website, which is horizoneurope.cz. And we always put every information about every event on this website.
Maybe in addition, if you just wish to focus on the ERC only, so you'll get immediately to this part of the website when you just write expert group for the ERC applicants or whatever. I will immediately get it.
Is there any action being taken by the Council to prepare the panel members and reviewers on indiscriminate use of AI? For instance, there was a huge increase in the number of Marie Curie applications in the latest call. Does anybody want to take? Are there any discussions in the Scientific Council for
I think
AI?
what I know is that if you read the 2026 work program till the end, where there are those other types of actions which will be funded from the budget, you will find out that there is the ERC Scientific Council is exploring also the use of AI, how this could help the panel members. And this is quite like a circle, because the AI is increasing the number of applications, but we are somehow forced to also seek ways how we can maybe use AI to basically help us with this huge increase. So we will see what the results will be. It is a pilot, so it is not yet implemented in the evaluation process in any way. But you can read about this in the published work program, basically, already.
Yeah, maybe the question was the other way around, right? It was about AI helping the applicants to write their proposals and then, leading to oversubscription and things like this. I'm really curious about this. Of course, when I was on the council, which was already a few years ago, AI still did not exist. So this issue was not, on that scale that we have today. But I think it's very interesting. So there will be soon a panel chair meeting for the consolidator where I will participate, and I think this will be one of the hot topics there. So, but we'll keep you informed.
Maybe a little bit of experience, not from the ERC panel. When I served, there was no dream of the AI that in the measures that we have now, but. Definitely there will be an impact on, say, searching for the literature, searching for the similar work, etc., etc., and this can be positive in some sense. But on the other hand, as we now read these proposals from our applicants and in quite a detail, and we have already identified some applications that we really believed that was done with the help of AI, and it was not positive. Why? Because it was clearly recognizable that it is not kind of, I would say, personal touch of how the questions and answers and ideas were formulated. So, well, we will see, but the practice will show, but I think ERC is very different from Maria Curie, for example, and from all the others, because the criteria are very, very different. So I think the influence, the negative influence of AI on ERC, I would expect would be much, much smaller than the other schemes.
Thank you. So we move on to the next question. Do you have any recommendations for people who from 2027 onwards will be eligible for both the starting and the consolidated grant? How should they decide which to apply for? It's a good question. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, this was one of my discussion points, as far as I remember. So I don't know whether I should add anything on top of this. I think if let me just reiterate, I think if you are eligible for both, if you're within that 5 years window and you're eligible for both, I think of course, if you already had starting grant before, there's no question. Now there is a strict rule, only one starting, only one consolidator. So you have to apply for consolidator. Even though age-wise you would be still eligible for starting, if you already had starting before, there's no way around it. If not, then I think you should really think twice before you would submit as a consolidator. I think the more natural, the more automatic would be just to apply for a starting. Just follow the trajectory, starting, consolidator, advanced. If you apply for a consolidator without having a prior starting within that window, I think you have to have a strong case for doing this.
Maybe if I can add a little bit, you have seen from Tomáš's presentation how ERC is really thinking very hard how to improve, not only learn from mistakes, that what I've mentioned, but also from inconveniences and how to make things better. So this has an implication. Don't try to play a game with the ERC. This is the worst thing what you can do, because it's behind every decision of the scientific board within the ERC. There is a really very good rationale, and Tomáš have explained that. That means if you do something which would not look rational, this is a dead end of your proposal.
So there was a basic justification for the council to introduce that overlap. And you remember that was because if you get your ERC starting the first year after PhD, once you finish, you should be already able to apply for a consolidator. So this is the reason for the overlap. And if you get your starting the last year, you still should be able to apply for a consolidator. So this is the reason how they set the windows here. Okay, just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Next question is for teams that already have a productive collaboration. What are the key elements we need to demonstrate so that the project is clearly seen as going beyond our usual joint work and truly requiring the synergy grant framework?
Maybe I'll start. Again, collaboration is different from synergy. What does the synergy grant mean? You may look at it as a building. So synergy means that if you move out one of the bricks from your building, everything will collapse. It simply doesn't make any sense of thinking about it. That's synergy, okay? And that's the difference. Collaboration is much kind of weaker thing. So that's, I think, constitutes the answer to that, okay? Collaboration is not enough to apply for the synergy. And that's why many synergy applications just end up in the first round of evaluation by saying synergy is not explained well, that's it, at that. Okay.
Tomáš, would you like to add something? Because you were at the beginning when the Scientific Council introduced synergy grants.
I don't know what to add beyond what Zdeněk said. I was not on the panel, and I never applied for synergy. I don't have hands-on experience with that. I mean, it's in the collaborative grants in EU, you can have one or two very strong PIs, and maybe the rest doesn't have to be necessarily a strong PI, but contributing some important expertise or providing some important equipment or something like this. And it can still fly reasonably well. With ERC synergy, it wouldn't. Every single PI out of these 2 to 4 has to be on the ERC level in terms of track record and in terms of contributing to the synergy grant. So it should be a sort of a consortium of 2 to 4 individuals who are every single individual is on the ERC level. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question: will the maximum budget for individual ERC grant types be increased? For example, due to inflation in the next framework program? I think this goes too far in the future, but Elida, would you like to add something to that?
We know that there are serious discussions about that, but of course the next framework program is just now started to be negotiated, so it is really too early to say with confidence how much of a budget the ERC will get. And if we are lucky and we get a seriously increased budget, I think there will be a discussion about increasing also the individual grants. Because we know that in some countries, and I have heard also from some Czech applicants, that this is starting to be quite limiting. So the ERC knows, of course, about that, and they consider this for the future.
Yeah, please.
From the discussion on the ERC Council that, one of the biggest concerns was the success rate. The ERC was really concerned if the success rate was getting too close to 10 or even below 10%. And it did happen, in particular in advanced grants, in a few times that it was below 10%. And, then it becomes strange, the whole scheme, for many, many reasons. So I think one of the main reasons why, it would make perfect sense, right? Inflation and everything, and it's the same amount as it was, from 2007. But the ERC Council did not want to compromise the success rate, so within the total budget of ERC. So I think if there is a reasonable increase in the total budget, I think this would be a legitimate move.
Thank you. Next question is about the restrictions, the submission restrictions. Let's say someone gets a C in step 1 of the starting grant call, in the 2024 call, how do we count the 2-year period? Does that mean the next possibility will be in 2026 or 27 call?
So you have to take into account that for 2 next calls you are banned. So that means that you really can apply to the 2027 call. Yeah, because 2025 and 2026 are unfortunately not for you, and only then you can apply if you got C. So I hope it clarifies the question.
Thank you. Is it allowed to have senior researchers for example, more than 15 years after PhD in consolidate or starting grants? If so, how many senior members are recommended to be involved based on your own experience? I think that's for Zdeněk, the question.
I think that I've already answered that. I mean, ERC is not about rules, and if you follow this rule, then this will happen. It's not about the algorithm. So it's not dogmatic, and I've said that. If you justify what you do, and the justification is convincing for the panel, that's fine. But in this case, if you will have many more senior people than you in the team, that looks really suspicious. And I think if you manage to get into second round, be ready for being really grilled during the interview.
Thank you, Zdeněk. If I may add to that, I think it must be clear from the proposal that the idea is your own and that you are the leader. That is what we highlighted also previously during our events and workshops. So we can move on to the next question. Based on your experience, what are the weights assigned in the evaluation for starting to prior publication track record? Prioritize publication track record versus ambition of the idea. So,
what is the ratio between the proposal and the track record, CV track record?
Yeah.
So again, I think the procedures are now changing. I'm quite curious what happens now in the call 26, because the Scientific Council wants to sort of more streamline the process. I think the change will be for the CV and track record is that the panel members will be given sort of an itemized questionnaire, and they will just tick boxes for a few questions on the track record and publication. So while for the proposal you have these marks that set the initial, it's not ranking, but it's the initial, stage of the discussion, or non-discussion now, actually. So, so in general, this also means, again, that, and also for the proposal itself, there has to be a written justification for the mark. So the panel member have to justify it in writing why they think that this mark is the right one. So this again just shows again and again the same thing. There is more emphasis on the proposal than on the CV and track record. The CV and track record has to underpin the proposal, in particular in terms of feasibility. I mean, is this the right person to perform this? And did this person already show that he or she can develop an original and daring idea in the past? So this is important in connection to the proposal again. So I think more emphasis is supposed to be on the proposal. Of course, again, the panel members are human beings, and again, from my experience, the sort of the conscious, unconscious prejudices is that the panel members still like to look carefully at the CV. I mean, it does make a lot of influence on their decision.
Okay, thank you. We have a next question related to the new structure of the proposal, I think. I am a bit concerned with part B1, not mentioning implementation at all. Is there a risk that many applications will initially look exciting and then their B2 parts will systematically disappoint?
Well, again, my understanding is, and I haven't seen these new proposals yet, I believe I will see them now, but I think it's a bit misunderstanding. In the first part, you still have to explain the overall strategy, the basic ideas of how you will implement the project. It still has to be in part one, as it used to be in the part B1 in the old scheme. So I think the part B1, or now the part one of the proposal, will not be very different from the past. The difference is that the panels are not now asked to evaluate your proposal in step one based on the feasibility. So they don't want the panel to get entangled into long discussions of feasibility and primarily focus on the idea and on the overall strategy of the project. And the details of the implementation will come only in step two and in the part two of the proposal. So I think it's still important in part one to explain in the broad sense how you're going to tackle. This could be actually important part of your idea, that you have an idea how to solve this long problem. The problem even could be known, it could be a well-known question in the community, but the idea could be that I now know in principle how to solve the problem, and you have to outline it in enough detail or convincingly enough.
Thank you. And next question is about to what extent do evaluators discuss information provided in the other parts of the proposal, in part A, for example, ethics or budget justification?
I can start. Go ahead.
I think as for the ethics, these parts are not really given to evaluators at all because they are restricted for ethics experts. Only if the proposal is selected for funding, then it gets to ethics screening. And as for the budget, sometimes we see in evaluation reports some recommendations of the panel as for the budget. So for instance, the additional funding is not justified well enough, so the panel decides to cut a part of the additional funding. So it happens from my experience.
Yes, but budget is not part of the decision of the panel in terms of ranking. That's very important. So budget is not an evaluation criterion where the panel is making the ranking. Only once the ranking is done and there are proposals selected for funding, or maybe sometimes plus one or two because there could be additional proposals in the short list, in the reserve list. Only those proposals are then discussed in terms of the budget, and there can be cuts, but there are no cuts introduced so that the panel can fund more projects. There are cuts only because the panel thinks that this expense is not necessary. It usually concerns capital investment, and most importantly, this additional 1 million or 1 million euros that some of the applicants may ask for. So this is the thing that is then quite extensively discussed in detail.
Okay, thank you. We have last two questions. Given the eligibility windows are being increased significantly, can we expect more submission, especially for starting grants? And could that cause a drop in the success rate? What do you think? Are there any measures to prevent it?
At the last ERC and CP meeting, we raised this worry to the Scientific Council, and the idea is that applicants, that maybe in the first years, maybe, but hopefully applicants will then adjust to the new system of thinking. But there is, basically the answer is that we have to see and wait. So
again, maybe I can comment from the discussions I remember on the Scientific Council. Is that, this is again statistics and big numbers statistics, is that there were some concerns that people who are just finished the consolidator age group and had to apply as an advanced, they would have very low success rate because you have to compete with the big gurus in the field. But the truth is, based on statistics, there was no big gap in success rate. So everything was continuous. And there's no more people, right, in the community. It's still the same number of people, and now they will have to just decide whether they go for starting, consolidator, and advance. Maybe the distribution will change a little bit. That could happen, and we will have to see. But probably the scientific council, based and all these decisions are based on large number statistics. They convinced themselves that this is not going to be a big issue. Well, we will see.
And the very last question, with regards to the track record, is it better to cite less works relating to the project or more, with some works not relating to the project you are applying to? Quality over quantity? I think this is a question you shouldn't ask for ERC. But please, Zdeněk, I see you will answer.
First, a little misunderstanding. As Tomáš said, it's not just related exactly to your question of your project, but to the field, to showing the state of the art in the field. That's one thing. And the second, of course, doesn't make sense to not to be consistent in your proposal. Here, there is a rule of the weakest chain. If you have a chain, you know, and some of the part of the chain is very weak, that it will break, okay, when it will pull. And that's exactly here. If you just put something which is not of the consistent quality with the rest, so the evaluators will say, well, why this person is putting here? It's just rubbish, you know. So, and that would devaluate the quality of the other things. So it's clear.
So, with this, I would like to thank all our speakers. We will move to the coffee break now. Please come back by 3 p.m. To the next session that will be opened by Zdeněk, and the panel discussion will be chaired by Professor Pavel Tomančák.